Yeah, all of you, if you'd like, just let us know where you are from. Of course, most of you are known faces, but those of you who are new, and even if you've been here before, Steve and Raghu, the two speakers today, the facilitators, they may not know who you are. By going through the chat, they would be able to understand. And if there is special interest that you have, what it would be. And later, of course, you can keep adding to the chat box, whatever it is that you would like them to talk more about, any questions that you have.
Hi, Rajiv. Hi, Rashmi.
So you located friends. Okay. Okay. I don't want to, I mean, Steve told me very specifically, don't go too deep into any kind of introduction. We can do it ourselves. So I will take that advice extremely seriously. This is a kind of special program that we will be introducing from time to time, bring people who are really experts in their fields. And I do believe both Raghu and Steve are experts in their field. Steve just now corrected me. I thought he was always from my second cohort, but he wasn't. He became a co-coach on the second cohort, coaching other people. But he was in my first cohort of about 24 people, with people like Harish Devarajan and others. And so he has been a tower of strength as far as Coacharya has been concerned, be a very dear friend. He is now residing in Goa, enjoying himself, growing a beard, all that kind of a stuff. And Raghu always, I believe, had a beard, which Raghu and I go back about 20, 30 years. But that time I thought he didn't have one, but he said he had. So Raghu has been in this esoteric path for a long time. And even from the time that I knew him, he had a practice called the Totally Aligned Organization, TAO, which, yeah, in Chinese it would be pronounced as Tao, but very much similar to the Tao principles. And he is an expert in yoga, truly an expert in yoga, and various aspects of yoga. And he has been introducing various Eastern concepts in the whole practice of leadership development. And I had met with him again a few years ago, along with Ashok Malhotra of EUM, Shubhri, and he was actively engaged in terms of using those methodologies as well. So both of them are remarkable sources of inspiration. And I'll leave them with you or leave you with them. And as they go along, please come up with whatever questions that you have. I mean, this is not, at the face of it, this may not be seemingly like something to do with the IC of coaching competencies, but I can assure you, knowing some of the work that they have done, this is one of the deepest forms of creating a safe space with presence, active listening, and evoking awareness. And that's what coaching is all about. So you can add a tremendous value to yourself by going deep into them. And they'll be having 3 sessions. We will be putting it up on the Coacharya website. 2 more sessions each month, next month and the month after. Okay. With that, I'll get out of the way and I'll mute myself. I'll put myself off the video, and after some time I may have to leave. And please, Raghu and Steve, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to do this in this whole sequence of 3. Thank you, participants, for coming over this evening and spending the time with both Raghu and I. And we are seeing some of your names on the chat. We're all amongst friends. So that excites me even more. I'm going to kick it off by just sharing that around 2 weeks ago, I was assessor on an assessment center panel working for a client organization. And as part of that, we were in a consultation, as you usually do, during a calibration round, in which we had then shared up, totaled up, squared off a participant as to how he or she was doing. And the final tally was that in many of the exercises, many of the competencies, the person had not made the required standard. And the assessor had to obviously go ahead and in the development dialogue the next morning, share that news with the client. So during the calibration process, the assessor was trying to get as much information, evidence, data as possible so that he could, inform the client the next day. And as we were having that conversation, I sensed, obviously, that the assessor was having some amount of difficulty and turmoil in terms of the stress that he was going through in terms of being able to have the conversation the next day. And then when he did have the dialogue the next day and came back to report in the wash-up call, he said everything went well. We had a chat at the. He took it square. He didn't talk much about it. We danced around a bit in terms of next steps, etc. And then we agreed what are the things that we would do. And all in all, it worked out to be okay. And for me, at that moment, there was a very strong epiphany of what exactly, we do when we do what we do. And both Raghu and I come from a space where our own mentor, Pulin, used to say, in doing what you do, what are you really doing? And I came to this realization in terms of engaging with the assessor, that as a coach or as a person in a helping relationship, we are limited in how much we can access, progress, work with the other, with the amount of work that we do with ourselves. And unless we are able to really engage with that karta which is within us, the actor, unless we are in touch with our own judges and our own guardians that hold vigilance for us, we would get caught up in a drama of our own, even while we are engaging with the drama of the other. So you have got really three kinds of phenomena that's taking place. The phenomena of the self, of the coach, the phenomena of the client sitting in front of you, and the phenomena of the conversation that could perhaps often be at the level of the tabletop, which is superficial, nothing deep and emotive. So in the work that both I have learned from Raghu is this whole process of not just working at the level of the tabletop, but what is that process that allows us as coaches to deepen, to sink in, both with ourselves and with the other, so that we can meet him at where he is, and we can meet ourselves at where we are. The SaptaSwara is not a horizontal process that starts with building rapport, confidentiality, and all the ICF with regards to a sequence of how you set it up. That is the process of coaching. The SaptaSwara is the avatar with which the coach emerges to himself and to the other, and how that gets deepened through practice. And we'll talk about that. I remember Leon Vanderbilt in that session in 2011 left me with a very telling comment. He said, you know what? If you can just come with presence and come with acknowledgement, that itself is coaching. And everything else that you bring in is bonus. But just presence, to be present to the other and to acknowledge that heroic self that the other person has, that is coaching. And we are really talking about the hero or the heroic self, the complete possibility for both the coach as well as the client on the other end. With that, I want to just pass it on to Raghu to build from there.
Okay, interesting, Steve. I'll just go straight into some of the things Ram was alluding to. I'll go straight into the yogic framework of looking at this. Yeah, the reason why I'm saying that is in the Yoga Sutras, one of the recommendations for a person who is experiencing dukkha is to approach somebody who is called a Vitaraga Vishayam. Okay, a Vitaraga Vishayam is a very, very interesting concept. It says that if I'm, let's say Steve is coming and speaking to me, yeah, where am I coming from? Where am I listening from? Yeah, so everything I listen to Steve, like he said, guardian and judge and so on, the moment I receive him fully, something is going to happen to me. So if Steve is talking about, let's say in this context, a fear of receiving the feedback from me, I'm going back to the story Steve was talking about, and it triggers my fears, then the actual exchange between us will be dancing around our fears, pretending it doesn't exist. Whereas that is where the exchange will be happening. Yeah, so my level of, in a sense, having worked through my fears and being able to acknowledge them and not run away from them at all allows me to get all my energies together and to be in sync with Steve's reality. Now, unless I'm able to do this, yeah, not be afraid of Steve's fears, but resonate with his fear, I cannot walk a few steps with him and then help him to maybe change or maybe look at things deeper and so on. So this idea of the Vitaraga Vishayam is something that I think is very central. And it's a very, very old concept which we have to work with. Now, let me give you one or two other very interesting things along with this. Now, Steve also talked about three things: the self, the other person, and the conversation. Yeah, I don't know if he's been reading the Taittiriya Upanishad or not. Maybe he is sneakily going and reading it up or whatever. But in that, there's a very interesting thing that all reality happens in a meeting between two things. So between the teacher and the taught is where knowledge arises and so on. There's a sequence of this. So there is no reality out there. When I'm coaching Steve or receiving coaching from him, there is no reality except what he and I generate at that meeting point. So it becomes very important to understand who is meeting whom. Yeah, because the other very interesting concept, which is related to the Vitaraga Vishayam, is it says that all human contact or any contact between me and anything else is actually a contact between two forms of prana, two forms of life. So what is happening? Life is coursing in me, life is coursing in Steve. And depending on how open we are to this flow of life, we will exchange this in whatever we are saying. In my exchange with Steve, I will offer him energy and he will accept the energy. Now, if my energy is tainted with fear, let's say, I will only evoke fear. Yeah, in Steve. So these were some of the things that struck me when Steve was talking about this exchange, this coaching exchange, that maybe one has to look at the coaching exchange in terms of meeting between two pranas, And if my ability to evoke a living process, my ability to evoke a healing energy from within me as a coach is high, I will evoke that in Steve. If I'm evoking fear in me, that is what I will evoke in Steve. I can say anything at this superficial level, but that is the actual pranic exchange. Yeah, is that making sense, Steve?
Yeah.
Then maybe that's where the SaptaSwara is all about. No? SaptaSwara is the practice that helps me tune my insight so that I can play whatever the music is that is relevant and important for you as a coach to respond to at that point.
Maybe that's a good segue, Raghu, for the first note, which is of Maitri, friendliness, which is in the whole exchange. At what stage? I mean, when you're seeing the client in a certain stage, uh, who is it that is reaching out to him? And, uh, because otherwise, if as a coach you're caught with your own guardian, your own judge, and
Correct.
you're holding back your own maitreya and your own nurturer, but you're engaged with the processes that are in front and are working with that. Uh, the ability to release oneself and to be able to release the other becomes thwarted, becomes blocked. So what is this whole swara, the first swara of Maitri all about?
Should we just list out all the swaras, Steve, so people are not in suspense about what the other 7 are, more, or maybe we leave them with some suspense.
Good idea. No, good idea. Let's just name it.
We'll just name it, okay? So we're calling the first swara Maitri. And all the words, by the way, are taken from the Yoga Sutras. Yeah. So Maitri means friendliness. Okay, that's a simple term. We'll go into much more detail. That's why we are going to have a couple of follow-up sessions so that we can go into each of these in much greater detail. The first is called Maitri. Yeah, so very broadly, it is building trust and bringing compassion to myself and the other. Myself first and then the other. The second word is karma. Now, karma simply means the energy with which I act, the intent with which I act. Right? So I have to understand where my action is coming from. And Steve was talking about that very important question: in doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? Now, if you extend that question a little bit, the question actually becomes, in doing what I'm doing, who am I being? Where am I coming from? Where is my energy getting evoked from? Now, that is a very, very important question. And then the third swara, I'll tell you why we are calling these swaras, is called Dharma. And what we mean by Dharma here is a very simple question, which actually is the basis of the understanding of Dharma and Mahabharata. Am I enlivening myself? Am I enlivening the other and the context simultaneously? Yeah, so in this particular space, now when I'm speaking to Steve, am I enlivening myself? Am I enlivening Steve? Am I enlivening all of you? That is the Dharma question. Yeah, and obviously on Zoom right now, we're a bit constrained because I can only see Steve and I can not see many of you, right? So, yeah, the fourth question is the key word is called Nyana. Now, Nyana doesn't mean just knowing and so on. Nyana also means the whole process of how I transform by what I know. Because in the Sanskrita language, words like Nyana and all that are not nouns, they're verbs, right? And they talk about a whole being, content of the being. It's not something that's held like in a library. Yeah. So that's the next word, Nyana. So that we will explore also. And then the fifth word is a very important word, which for some reason has gone out of modern discourse. This word is called Ramyam. Now, Ramyam means an inner spiritual awakening. And in the idea of how you design things, Ramyam is a very important concept. Ramyam is delight, playfulness, creativity, and so on. And it comes only when there's a certain enthusiasm for life from within. Yeah. And then we go into the sixth word, which is Yogam. Yogam here means integration of all my inner faculties and capabilities. And we'll go into that. And the last word is Abhyasa or Sadhana. Abhyasa means consistent practice. Yeah, so it's not like yoga is not something that you do all by yourself in one corner. You have to engage and learn. The actual discovery is in the learning, in the engagement. Otherwise, it's not active learning. Yeah. So those are the seven. And the reason why we are using a term, which is like a musical term, SaptaSwara is a musical term. So you look at each as a note, that my veena, if I look at myself as a veena, these are the 7 key notes, right? And all of Indic music is based on 7 notes and how you play with these 7 notes. Now, I have to be able to respond to whatever is the music that Steve comes with. So if Steve is coming with a happy raga, I should be able to respond to that. If he's coming with a sad raga, I should be able to respond with that. Otherwise, obviously, there is no resonance between me and Steve. So if I'm a coach, my veena should be tuned and in complete quietude without any bias in it. Only then there'll be resonance. Otherwise, there'll be dissonance at some point. I will only be able to, as a coach, resonate to those musical notes that I like. And if Steve comes up with something else, I will either block it or judge it or something. I will not be able to meet it in a way that is evocative and enlivening. So those are the 7 keywords, and we will examine them in detail as we go along. Yeah.
Let's build on what you said, Raghu, in terms of being tuned with self and tuned with the other and tuned with what is happening in the context.
Yeah.
Of the self, the other, and the context. And when we talk about the swara or the note, we are referring also to what I learned about the rasas, which are really the liminal feelings that come from the very base and emerge, which is in the space of Shantam. And from there, the rasas flow to be joyful, to dance the notes of the self and the other, and then goes back towards Shantam.
That is if you're a Vitaraga Vishayam. Yeah, there's a caveat, no? If you're not a Vitaraga Vishayam, 2 things will happen, Steve. One is, certain notes in my guitar will be dud notes. Some strings will not be tuned properly. Yeah, so when I try to play a chord, because all of us are chords, now we're not linear. when I try to play the chord, it'll sound very odd because, yeah, my strings are not tuned. Yeah. So the process of tuning myself is the process through which the SaptaSwara will help us.
And which
So
I was
once,
saying earlier, Raghu, in the
yeah,
beginning, was about this, the own tone, when not in sync with oneself, and the own tones, when not in sync with the other, will create the discordant cacophony.
yeah, it will. And that is dukkha. That is where all issues come up, no? All human issues come up when I am discordant with the world around me. Yeah. And the other important thing is, one of the things that you were alluding to, that my teacher Krishnamacharya would say, is that if you really understand the practice of yoga and the inner process of yoga, then I will be a person who is always in Shantam. That means my guitar or my veena is perfectly tuned and very, very quiet and silent. And it can respond to any demand appropriately and then go back to Shantam. Yeah, so this is a very important quality, I think, in a coach. Coach is a modern word, right? The yogic word for a coach is a vitaragavashyam.
Yeah. Which is where, in the sense of coaching, at one level, the coach is listening to the other, but is also at one level working with, okay, what do I now, which choices do I make, where do I go, where do I steer, where do I direct? And I think what I'm hearing you say, Raghu, is that when one is in resonance with the other, there's really no choice. There is a movement that takes place of one resonating with the other, rather than making choices of, okay, now this or that or that. Would that be a fair comment?
Let's get into a little bit of depth here. Yeah, I'm assuming we're in the company of people who would like to go deep, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so a few thumbs ups will help us to go into this space. Yeah. Okay,
Right.
I'm seeing one
Now,
flying up,
more.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah. Now, one of the things to remember, or a couple of things here to remember. One is that in the yogic understanding of perception, yeah, perception doesn't take place because of a signal response. Yeah. Now, perception takes place because I choose to pay attention to something. And because I pay attention to something, I receive. Yeah. So, for example, right now, yeah, your attention was shifted to the bottle of water you have to drink.
Mm.
Yeah. Your attention to me would have been less than you were listening before.
Yes.
So you're listening, the sound is still the same, but where you're responding from has shifted. This is very important, especially for a coach to understand. Yeah, the second thing that is very clearly stated in yoga, and it's very, very simple, is every one of my senses is a transducer. Yeah. So I'm receiving some light signals. I'm translating the light signals into something and making meaning out of it. There is no meaning that is hanging around outside out there. I'm listening to you. I'm converting those sounds into meanings. So every meaning I make of everything you say has nothing to do with you, Steve. It has only to do with me and how I'm listening. So what I think you're saying depends on how I'm listening, where I'm listening from, and how well I'm tuned. The more I'm close to Shantam, the more my listening will be resonating with you. The less I'm tuned, only that is going to play out. Right? So I will interpret what I listen to in my terms. If I'm afraid of what I'm listening to, I'll cut it off in some way or the other. And at some deep level, you will sense this. Yeah, that's why we said prana to prana. Na? Somewhere you will experience this. So in the story you were referring to, if the gentleman you were talking about was defensive, like you sensed it, the other person is in an asymmetrical relationship. Na?
True.
So he'd have figured out how to play the game out there and say, yeah, thank you very much. You did a great job for me, and gone away. But there'd be disturbance left. And I'm, speculating that because you were listening to this guy carefully, you'd have picked up this defensiveness and this lack of quietness in the person you were talking to, in the person you were advising.
Yeah.
So that would have been what created your epiphany.
Yeah.
So good for you, Steve.
So is this the same as what Jiddu Krishna would say about the observed phenomena is the observer himself?
It is, no. This is yeah. It's like saying that only what I resonate to, I know. It's simple. No, I cannot know anything else. Right? And this is the starting point of yoga. That I actually never know the world outside. I'm constantly converting the signals into something inside. So what I know of myself, I'm not talking about math and all that, but of the rest of it, I only know myself. I actually don't know anything else. And I'm interpreting the world around from these responses.
So if I don't know myself deeply, then I end up either projecting or introjecting.
Of course. No, I, as a coach, would be projecting more because I'm in a position of power. No? The other person is coming to me vulnerable. So the chances of me receiving what I'll be receiving is their
Transference.
transferences, not projections. No? I'll be sending projections into you. And in the psychoanalytical terms, I will not be discussing with you. I'll be counter-transferring to you.
Yeah. And one of the things that struck me when we look at ICF and coaching, we talk about building capability, competencies, et cetera, et cetera. But when we talk about the Maitri, we're actually saying that, can I be human unto myself?
First,
Can I be
absolutely.
human unto the other? Can I be human?
Can I be human? Exactly. And what does it mean to be human? It means healing myself, not carrying my wounds, not carrying my angers and reactivities without resolving them. Then I'm not human. I'm that reactive person. Yeah, to be human is to touch my deepest potential, in a very simple way. And I think the only way one really understands what it means to be human is if I'm not stuck with my own inner hurts and so on and so forth. It's only when I resolve them that I'm able to go and touch the inner space. So humanness is in the potential to be compassionate. Humanness is in the potential to love. And I experience dukkha when this potential gets blocked.
It is also that quality in which one can grace, live with one's vulnerabilities, idiosyncrasies, warts, pet peeves, live with one's own limitations.
That's the starting point, Steve. My sense is if you really get in touch with all of these things you're saying, what's and this and that, and you're able to look at it with compassion. It's only then that you'll be able to meet another person with their problems, their wounds, and so on with compassion. Yeah, and what the Yoga Sutra says is that if you can look at yourself like that, you will release a healing energy from within you. So in a sense, if I look at the yogic coaching frame, all that I can do is to touch my healing energies and therefore maybe help you to evoke your healing energies. I cannot do anything to you.
And so in coaching parlance, when we use the word trust, actually what we are basically saying in that sense is, I see you, I feel you, I touch you, I know you, because you and I in this moment, I am you. I can experience everything that is with you. And that is...
It has to happen, Steve. That has to happen. I cannot tell you this. If I'm really listening, it'll happen. And I can only really listen if I'm coming from a clean place, if I'm coming from a silent, quiet place. If I'm not coming from a quiet, silent place, yeah, I cannot listen to you.
Yeah, you said I cannot say this to you. However, I know one event in which I said this to a participant who was really like, and that itself just calmed the whole place down.
No, you must have been actually seeing him. Otherwise, you say that, he will say you're a fraud.
Yeah.
Unless he experiences it, why should he accept what you say?
I see that.
Your body doesn't lie, Steve, and your body picks up all of these things long before your mind translates anything. Your body picks it up.
Mm. Mm. There's been a couple of questions that are also coming on the chat. Do you think we want to go
Sure.
there? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so one question that's come up, let me say from the top, is for those of us who are still in the process of clearing our own individual blockages, what's the best way for us to be of use to someone else who comes to us for help amidst our own unhealed traumas and triggers, either in the form of coach client or any other types of relationships?
See, one is, I think, assuming that Steve and me are some Pauncha who are people is obviously not true. Huh? So what is it that is true? What is true is I'm trying as hard as I can to be very conscious of where I'm coming from, what my traumas are, and so on. Yeah. So when I'm aware of that, okay, chances are I will not react. Or even if some response comes, I will know where it's coming from. And what I usually do is I share it with the person I'm speaking to. Yeah. And say, look, this is what you're saying. This is what it's doing to me. And that itself helps because I'm being honest to myself and I'm being honest to the other person. And I'm not pretending to be anything I'm not. That's the starting point. The second is to have, I'm very clear about it. You must have a yogic sadhana. Because let's face it, yeah, anywhere in the world today, or what every psychology thing is coming back to Buddhist or to yogic practices to say, how do you really cleanse your inside?
Sure.
Yeah, because the only, the methods for inner work have been perfected over thousands of years. And obviously, a person has to come in and look at this to really understand how to cleanse the inside.
I was just thinking, Raghu, that in what we discussed some time back, which is that if one is caught with the dukkha in a circular motion, one can kept getting seduced by the power of being the victim,
Of course.
and then perpetuating the victimhood in ourselves, and then enjoying the seductiveness of being, being caught in the oppressed, and the oppressor then becomes another form of etc., etc. Now, and therefore, if one has to break away from this self-defeating kind of a place, is to expand not just the recollection of the dukkha, but to extend what you said was the bhumi, the ground in which the dukkha occurs, and to reform, relook, re-social, relook at that bhumi ground. Could you say a bit more of that, Raghu?
When you say all this, no, read this, read that, it sounds as though I can do something to myself. I cannot. Okay, what the Yoga Sutra says is very, very clear and simple. And it's very commonsensical. Who is doing it to me? Then I'm splitting myself, no, already. So when I judge myself, where am I judging myself from? Very often the judge is external voices that I've internalized. Right? So I first have to learn how to just listen to myself as it is without running away from it. Yeah? That is vairagya. Vairagya is not a consequence of something. Vairagya is the starting point of being just able to see. And if I see that I'm an idiot, be with my idiocy. Not as a judgment, but see the process. What is happening to me? Yeah? That is the starting point. Now, when I'm learn how to just listen and see what is happening to me, then things drop away, which are not mine. I can see, now, this is what I've internalized. This is what, right? So when I see this, I can drop off what is happening. That is all the raga and dvesha, na? My desires and my aversions fall away. Yeah? And that's like cleaning the mirror. That's like tuning the veena. So step by step, this process enables an inner tuning. Yeah, so when the tuning happens, I become a Vitaraga Vishayam. Vigata Ragaha. Vitaraga means Vigataha, which means it's fallen away. Ragaha refers to three things. One is fear of death. The other is desires. Third is aversions. Yeah. Children don't have any of these three. These are all induced. These are all taught. Yeah. Especially desires and aversions are clearly taught. So if I start observing myself carefully, without running away from what I see, and I'm not talking about non-judgmental listening, yevo, all of this kind of stuff. Right? Just looking at myself as I am. That is itself a very powerful thing to do. That is what is called tapas in yoga. Because this generates a certain tension. Steve, we have to stop looking at these things that are coming up. It's very distracting. Yeah? We'll go to that later. So you asked me a question about this, no? So let's focus on that. Yeah. Because it's a very critical thing. Yeah. So what happens to me when I'm looking at myself? Yeah. Anger comes up. I've been taught that being angry is a bad boy. How do I look at my anger without calling myself a bad boy? So then I have to look at it and say, where is this bad boy idea coming from? And I'm sure we will hear our mother or our father, that voice is still inside me, no? Right? But anger is a gift from God or whoever created me. I need it at certain points of time. So if I understand this energy in me without calling it good, bad, the more I'm tuned. So if you are sitting in front of me and you're angry, I can receive your anger without running away, without calling you a bad fellow or telling you shouldn't be angry or any such thing, and help myself and you understand where the anger is coming from. So my secondary responses to my primary evocations have fallen away. That is Vitaragam. Because we are filled with secondary reactions to every primary experience. And we forget how to be in touch with our primary evocations. And what yoga says is very simple, not like what Freud says. He says our primary evocations are always compassionate and full of love. They are not the monster inside. The monster is inside what I create through my secondary processes of suppressing and oppressing myself. They're not primary. So Maitri is a primary response to another human being. It's not something to be cultivated. What I have to look at is what stops my Maitri, what stops friendliness, what stops compassion. Because compassion is natural. For me to be evoked with some emotional response to a situation, which is karma, is natural. Then I overlay it. No, I shouldn't be like this. I should be like this, that, and the other. Right? Dharma is natural. So many of these words that we're talking about is what will happen when I don't get caught with these secondary descriptions of myself. And nowadays, the problem is it is not even a secondary description from my own culture. It's a secondary description from some other culture, which has a completely different idea of life and death and so on. So what we're talking about is simply returning to a self which is not overladen with all these external descriptions of me. And being able to be with myself as I am. If I really listen, Nyana will happen. If I'm not caught with aversion and desires and so on, I'll live happily. I'll live beautifully. I'll be joyous automatically. My energies will be integrated.
Then is it possible then that as you go deeper into this viewing, this looking, this examining, this observation, you recognize that some of the fear comes from the social mirror outside, as you said, not just one's own kal, desha, and context, but could be an imported one. It could be generationally old also, held in the psyche.
Of course. Of course.
So in many ways, society, perhaps, I'm being slightly jestful, is solving the problems it itself created.
Of course. Yeah. See, what you said just before, Steve, is very, very important. Yeah. Now, as Steve Correa, who's grown up in Goa, whatever, and me as Raghu, right? We can meet each other at the primary feelings very, very easily, right? But if you get caught with your conditioning and I get caught with my conditioning, how do we meet?
Just double tap on conditioning. What
See,
could...
conditioning is very simple. in my family, there are certain ways in which I'm called a good boy and certain ways in which,
I'm called a good boy.
yeah, you're called a good boy in some ways. Yeah. So if my good boy tries to interact with your good boy, we're not interacting from a primary feeling of saying, hey, it's fun being with you or whatever.
Cultural notions are interacting.
You're dealing with cultural notions. Now, if I come as a coach with my cultural notions and listen to you getting caught with your cultural notions, what happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be a disaster. No,
Disaster.
I'm just going to fit you into my frame of a good boy. And if you accept it, I say successful coaching.
Yeah. Even this notion that I am helping the other is a cultural notion.
Exactly what I'm saying. That's what I said before. Nah, I can only resonate, be there with you, whatever is happening, whatever you're saying, and be honest and authentic to myself. Then you might listen to the music that you're generating.
Yeah.
And play the music you wish to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be a bass player. You may not be a lead guitarist. You might be a
That,
drummer, for all you know.
that comes back to just that whole thing I started by saying that just being present, not steering, not directing, but being present to the other fully.
Wait. No, not present to the other. See, you used the word something, no? Avatar.
Mm.
The real meaning of the word avatar is avataranam, of an living energy into this form. So presence is not present to you. Present is present to whatever is happening to me when I'm listening to you. I'm not getting distracted by what I should do or what I shouldn't do. This being present to you and all that is all, from my point of view, not working, man.
That's my years of that's my years of Western culturalization.
Possible, yeah. It's actually a stimulus response. It comes from an assumption of stimulus and response, Steve. Yeah, if I assume that all perception is stimulus and response, then I have to be present to you to respond. If I look at response as attentiveness,
Yeah.
then it can only be present to myself and seeing where is my attention coming from, where am I directing my attention to.
Which I think that's so powerful because every time you're responding to saying that in hearing what you're saying, what is it that it's doing to me as I listen to you
Exactly.
saying what you're saying? What's
Exactly.
coming up for me? What's my space? Where is my world in this?
Exactly. Is my
And with all
compassion being
that,
evoked? See, the Maitri Karuna, the sutra, will go into it in detail, tells you very clearly what are the possible responses you have when somebody is speaking to you. You may not feel Karuna. You might feel pity. You might feel anger. You might feel reactive. Can I understand where I'm coming from? And when I understand where I'm coming from, I understand my conditioning,
yeah,
not your reality.
yeah.
Very often as coaches, we assume that we are this thing and that I'm picking up your reality. I don't think that's true at all. I can only pick up what is happening to me.
Yeah, as coaches, we end up doing a lot of what I would call as paraphrasing. What is the content I've heard you say? What is the feelings I've heard you evoke? And paraphrasing it back, offering it as if that is going to create the movement
If I
for the.
do it really accurately, it'll help. See, I very often when I see people paraphrase, they're interpreting. There's a whole difference between really listening to you and paraphrasing and interpreting in my words.
Hmm.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes or so, Steve. You want to look at any key questions and clarify them before we close?
No, there's some which are very functional, like how can we enroll for courses? And that's the Ritambara website. We'll give you all the answers to that. And this process of returning to my true self, the one not contaminated by conditionings, acceptance of myself and therefore the other. Yeah. There's another thing I just wanted to reflect, and I'm just saying this to actually to myself. Very often when we go through an intense process, we feel the urge to get straight to some action modality of saying, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. And the deeper going down to the sense saying what is being said, what is the deeper, like, the thing about Shravana, Manana, and the deeper contemplation of what we are hearing, what does it mean, what does it actually envision itself, what is the practice of me actually adopting that in myself. That gets skipped because one only hears.
Oh, but not even hearing properly. That's where the issue is, Steve. One is not even hearing properly. See, you talked about action, right? If I'm quiet inside, right? Action will arise from a space which is close to truth. If I'm not quiet, my action will arise from my bias.
Yeah. I wonder if the best use of time now, the 3 minutes we have, would have each person just write in the text message what are they feeling right now? What's happening in hearing what you've heard in the last 53, 54 minutes? What's the feeling that's coming up for you? What
Feeling word. Yeah.
Yeah. Calm, inspired, expansive, enlightening.
Reflective, in tune, inspired, curious, calm and inspired, reflective. How quickly can you read? Churn, quietude, slowing down, simplicity.
Nice.
Okay, we get a sense of it. I don't know how many we have lost in that overlapping, reflective.
Yeah.
Wiser, good, yeah. Hopeful.
Well, the good news is that this is the start of, this is the first one. We're doing 2 more. So we hope that you all come back and bring your friends. Any last words from you, Raghu, including how you are feeling right now?
I'm feeling very good. Second, this modality disturbs me.
Yeah. Not seeing faces, no? Yeah.
Not seeing faces is one. Second is this chat box thing is very distracting. And I can see that every now and again you're looking at the chat box instead of listening to me. That's
Yes.
also. So yeah, while I'm feeling good and quiet and whatever, I'm also mildly irritated with this medium.
I hear you. I think one of the anchor persons also triggered it by saying, please state your here and now evocations on the chat. So that's also been an invite rather than.
I know.
It's a invitational distraction.
Yeah. Maybe next time we work it out so that it's very clear. Now we give space and time for.
We get everybody, including postage stamp if necessary, but get everyone on the screen.
Get as many people as possible on the screen, and
I'm feeling very good.
I'd much rather hear people when they have a question, no?
Yes.
Rather than just see a small note and we don't know exactly where the person is coming from.
Yeah. Just as we start to wind this down, Raghu and I have co-authored and written detailed write-ups, which is placed in Medium and is also on Raghu's feed in LinkedIn. That starts with SaptaSwara, and then there are about at least 7 or 8 such. They all get published on a Saturday morning. So check for that in Medium or go to LinkedIn and you'll find it there. If you don't find it there, you'll find it on my LinkedIn, but it's certainly there. So that's some amount of reading for those who are interested. Raghu, last words from you as we wind down.
Yeah, I'd love to have more interactions with people, and I love this discussion, Steve, except for the occasional distraction with the messages.
Yeah. So the anchor folks, would you like to close this from your end, or how does one close this right now? Anyone from Coacharya?
Hi, Steve. Denz here from
Yeah,
Coacharya.
man. You want to close this right now? Or
Yes, I'll close it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And the next date and time will be sent to you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.